You know, uh, I'm sure not many people are going to see this YouTube video at this point. I have a couple videos out on my Stellar Health Awakening YouTube, and I think all but me and like my mom maybe and a couple friends have watched them, and that's a-okay with me. I've created this channel to just try to give out as much information as I can around health, wellness, training, kind of honestly like culminating all of the areas in the past 12 years that I've been working on as a human, from my creative outlets, like working to speak in front of people, from obviously my fitness and wellness background to more recently with my FDN certification and becoming an FDN practitioner and trying to get into kind of, again, the wellness space. I think one of the things that I've fallen into is trying to make videos and make content the way that everybody else in this space is. And it's a bit disingenuous because that's not who I am. I'm not somebody that's going for big, high production value. That's not where I'm going to thrive. To be honest, like my business, as far as coaching, is built around one-on-one. That's what it's going to be built around. Actually, helping individuals change their lives. It's not going to be built around content. I'm not trying to build some big content empire. I'm simply using like YouTube and Instagram and stuff to give generalized info out. And then, obviously, yeah, get some reach and see if people want to work with me. But so all that to say, I think something like this is a lot more fitting for me, where I'm just sitting here talking in front of my guitars, low grade production value. But what I'm about to talk about, I hope, is high quality information and education. And I think that's where I can stand out, is the education aspect. And the middle ground education. Again, a lot of the stuff we see online is so one way or the other. It's just so extreme. It's either all medicine is bad, it's carnivore diet versus veganism. And that's what sells, and that's what gets views, and that's probably why I'm not going to get a lot of views, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. So today I just want to talk about, in FDN, we kind of have a belief that there are 7 main systems or areas in the body that we can look to that when they are in dysfunction, they lead to chronic illness, disease, and what in FDN we call metabolic chaos. Metabolic chaos is kind of this catch-all term because at FDN we believe that all of these different systems, when there's breakdown in these systems, they feed into metabolic chaos, and then out of metabolic chaos, they kind of feed into dysfunction in the other areas. This idea that if there is a issue in one system, it's going to have a downstream issue in another system. You can't just try to fix like the gut and think that that's going to take care of everything. The gut impacts detoxification, impacts nervous system, impacts hormones, right, and everything like that. And so we're just going to briefly talk about the 7 systems, some symptoms you may be experiencing, and that might mean you need to look into that system, and how we approach this at FDN, why it's important to look at, why there might be a breakdown, all that kind of stuff. So FDN, there's a couple cool acronyms in FDN. Reed Davis made FDN. He's got some cool acronyms, just like CrossFit. HIDDEN is the acronym, and that stands for hormones, hormone system, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy system, nervous system, and then there's an additional one that they throw in, oxidative stress. They didn't get thrown in with hidden because hidden O wouldn't sound as good, but oxidative stress is also on there. So these are the systems, these are the areas we're looking at as FDNs to glean kind of like healing insights. And if there's breakdowns in any of these systems, we know that there's probably going to be downstream issues in some of the other systems. So hormone system. I think we all probably know hormones, right? It's one of the systems that a lot of people have some knowledge on, purely because, women's cycles get talked about a lot, menstrual cycles, women's hormones get talked about a lot, estrogen, progesterone. Men talk a lot about testosterone, right? And so we're thinking about sex hormones, especially as we age. But there's a lot more to hormones. There's our stress hormone, cortisol. A lot of people talk about cortisol. We have DHEA. A lot of people don't even know that DHEA is the parent anabolic hormone to testosterone and estrogen. So you need to have healthy levels of DHEA to then convert into testosterone. A lot of people don't know that estrogen is converted from testosterone through a process called aromatization. Too much aromatization, in men who carry too much fat leads to high estrogen in men. Fun fact, the more fat you carry as a man, the more aromatization, aromatase, it's an enzyme, you're going to have. Big problem. That's why you don't want to carry around extra fat as a man, or anybody for that case. But there's a lot going on in the hormone system. And at FDN, we believe in homeostatic balance. And so we don't look at just one level when we do this testing. We look at ratios. We look at the ratio of cortisol to DHEA. We want to know, is there a balance to that? We look at the ratio of estrogen to progesterone. Is there a balance in that? We look at the ratio of estrogen to testosterone, right? When there is a breakdown in the hormone system, it has cascading effects because the hormones are a communicator molecule for the rest of your body, right? They run through the blood, and they are going to signal to other cells, other tissues to either, excite, grow, stop. Like when cortisol gets released, it essentially signals to most of the other body, hey, stop exactly what you're doing, unless it's targeted towards fighting off this bear or whatever we got going on. And so, issues in the hormone system, and many people know those issues, cause huge downstream effects. Now, why those issues occur, there's lots of reasons. Chronic stress is a huge one. When there's chronic stress, there's a breakdown in that cortisol to DHEA ratio and that pathway. That creates huge issues. There's enzymatic issues. If you're not consuming enough protein or protein is not being broken down, we'll get into digestion. Amino acids are the building block of enzymes. So then you don't have those enzymes to convert. There might be a breakdown in what we call the HPA axis or the HPG axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, or the hypothalamus pituitary gonad axis. And so there's lots of different areas there can be breakdowns. And you can feel a myriad of things from these. I mean, obviously, like low libido gets talked about a lot, hair loss or hair gain, depending on what that hormone is, infertility issues, irritability can be one of them, mood swings, night sweats. There's lots, right? And that can be something to look into. Now, here's one of the dark secrets with hormones is when you get them tested on a blood test, it's good insight, but it's woefully not inaccurate. It's just not giving you a full picture. A lot of the markers you're getting on a blood test, they're not fully functional hormones. They're not always the hormones that are like in use. Just because they're circulating in your blood doesn't mean they're actually going to signal anything. At FDN, we use saliva, and some people are like, saliva, that seems less scientific. It's actually more accurate because if it's in your saliva, we know that that is usable hormone. That's going to be used by the tissue. And so it's actually a very good use of testing to see those hormones. And so, and again, a lot of blood tests, they won't give you ratios. They'll just give you a look at it. And so you go to the doctor, you have low testosterone. They don't talk about why, or they don't look at the full system or any of the other systems, and they just pop you on testosterone. And that's a whole nother issue because low testosterone is a symptom of other things going on. And if you just take a pill for it, or if you just take shots for it, you're not taking care of why that's happening in the first place. You're not addressing it. That's the medical system in general. Okay, so that's hormones. Immune system, another one a lot of people are aware of. We talk about the immune system. For our purposes at FDN, when we think about the immune system, we kind of think about it in the realm of proper function, over functioning, or under functioning. And we test specifically a marker called SIG-A, secretory IgA. This codes for an immunoglobulin. I always have such a hard time with that if I try to say it too fast. We have two parts of our immune system. We have the innate immune system. I think my dogs are literally about to fight each other. Anyways, we have the innate and we have the adaptive. The innate immune system is kind of that like first line defense. You can think of it like the beat cops, on the ground. These are your like natural killer cells, your macrophages. They're very effective. But, if a pathogen gets past the innate immune system, we have the adaptive immune system. This is the immune system most people are frequented with, especially like since, the whole COVID stuff. We talk about antibodies. We talk about all that kind of stuff. B cells specifically are what contain antibodies. And again, we have 5. We have IgG, IgA, IgM, IgD, and IgE. They all have different functions. IgG is your kind of like, I think it's like 75% of your antibodies are IgG. It's like your long-term immune system antibodies. IgA is your first line of defense after your innate. That line, your IgA lines your mucosal barriers, so nose, throat, eyes, gut. That's the big one. Anyways, what we want is an immune system that's ready to go, ready to fight, can have an immune response, can neutralize pathogens or whatever it is, and then go back to a homeostatic balance place. But what we find is people that, again, chronically stressed, not eating properly, just, again, metabolic chaos, they have one of two things going on. They either have a currently active immune system, which in and of itself is not bad. If that immune system, after it nullifies the pathogen, can go back to homeostasis. One of the big things we see, though, that is a sign is an underactive immune system. And when we see an underactive immune system, what we know is going on there is that this is an immune system that's just been active for so long, chronically, whether that's months or years for a lot of people, it can no longer keep up. It just can't do it anymore. And it's what we call in an exhaustive state. And all of these systems can become into an exhaustive state. And quite honestly, when all of these systems get into an exhaustive state, that's when disease arises. But that's what we're looking for as, FDN practitioners is what's going on with SIG-A. If SIG-A is in this exhaustive state, we can assume that the immune system has been overrun, overburdened, and overworked for so long. And we all can assume where that's going to go, right? If the immune system's been overburdened for so long and now it's underperforming, any little thing is going to make us sick. And these are the people that get sick a lot in the year. Maybe they're the people that get strep throat a lot, mono, allergies seem to be really bad for these people. We can almost guarantee if we tested their SIG-A, whether in their gut or through their blood, that they're going to have actually really low SIG-A. And again, that adds in that metabolic chaos. That's a huge stressor for the body if your immune system's just always under fight and can't fight pathogens well anymore because it's just shot, right? So that's the I, the immune system. So we have H, we have I. First D is digestion. We mean gut. There's a lot to the gut. Again, this video is just meant to be a gross overview of what we look at, but we do look at the gut. The gut gets talked about a lot. In the wellness world and the functional world, a lot of people believe that everything starts with the gut. I don't believe everything starts with the gut. I actually think gut dysfunction is a symptom of upstream issues like chronic stress and other things. Echo. My dog. I think he's chewing his paws. Anyways. And with that, when there is chronic stress, when there is other issues going on, you're in this chronic fight or flight state. We'll talk about in the nervous system. Your body can't repair. Cells can't repair. Maybe what we call your mucosal barrier, your brush border of your gut gets worn down. Tight junctions open up. And we have what's called leaky gut. If that happens, bad little critters get in there. When bad little critters get in there, that's when we have what we call dysbiosis. Dysbiosis, and some of you maybe have heard of this if you're in the health and wellness space and you're into this stuff, is when you have, again, lack of homeostatic balance or control in the gut. A lot of people use good and bad for gut bacteria. There's not really anything such thing as good and bad gut bacteria. We have something called commensal bacteria, which is, what we think of as good bacteria. It's just like our body's natural bacteria that we know has healthy benefits. And there's something called opportunistic bacteria, which again, like some people would say, that's the bad bacteria. It's fine. It's healthy if it's in checked levels, if it's in homeostasis. It's called opportunistic though, because given an unhealthy gut environment, these little critters proliferate. And when they build to a certain level of overgrowth, that's when we start to have issues like autoimmune diseases, diarrhea or constipation, gas, bloating, skin rashes. The list goes on. There's so many things that can come from dysbiotic gut. And then from there we have yeast, candida. Hi, I have candida on my healing journey. Been eradicating that. H. pylori. Hi, me again, which is a very bad bacteria. But again, a lot of practitioners will only look for H. pylori. There's so much other stuff to look for. H. pylori is bad. If you have H. pylori for an extended period of time, it can lead to ulcerative colitis and even worse stuff like gut cancer. So I understand why you want to attack that. But really what it does is it continues to create this really bad gut environment that all these other things can proliferate. It also messes with your hydrochloric acid, so your gut juices, your gut acid, so you can't break down, your pancreatic enzymes, your mucosal barrier. So it has lots of issues, but again, it's more about what it does to the environment of the gut than just it in and of itself. But again, that's why we look at the gut. That, you know, and if you have leaky gut, all of a sudden critters are getting in, your immune system's getting activated, your macrophages are releasing histamines, you're feeling that as an allergy symptom. Like there's just so much going on with the gut. And if we have dysfunction in the gut, we can see how that's going to add just rippling downstream effects. These critters, they get overgrowth, they start to burden the liver. So then we have detoxification issues. And so there are a lot of problems. And I understand why certain practitioners kind of go with this belief that everything starts with the gut because there is so much downstream issues from it. But I believe, and kind of one of the things that's taught at FDN, is that gut dysfunction is a byproduct of other things. Now, once it happens, though, it does cause a lot of metabolic chaos. And again, left unchecked, there's been lots of studies done on this. Gut dysfunction left unchecked can lead to neurological issues, can lead to, you know, Alzheimer's, dementia. There's even some studies saying that it, you know, can lead to, I think autism. You know, I don't think it's been directly linked to that. I just know that if they've been doing stool transplants and finding that actually helps a lot for certain neurological disorders. Anyways, all that to say, there's a lot that is linked to the gut. So that's D for digestion. That's the first D, HIDD. It's like we're playing horse. The second D is detoxification. Now, detox is a buzzword in the wellness world, to be sure, and it's been for a while. I mean, how many of you have done a detox, right? And that's unfortunate because detoxification is actually a real thing. It is a natural thing that our body does. It has to do it. Otherwise, we would drop dead. But the fact that, oh, here's Echo coming in. The fact that in the wellness world, it's been kind of hijacked as a buzzword has given it some discreditation where now some people are like, well, like if we weren't detoxing, we would drop dead, or detoxification isn't real or anything like this. Detoxification is 100% real. We are taking in things all day long, breathing, eating, drinking, you name it. And there are things in there that do not go well with our body, and our body will detox it. How, you ask? Well, our good old friend, the liver. Okay. The liver wears a lot of hats. It's kind of, I think in Chinese herbal medicine, it's called like the grandfather organ because of how much it does, how much it's responsible for. One of its main purposes is detoxification. Think about alcohol. What's it doing? Why is your liver the thing that's impacted when you drink alcohol? Because your liver has to, Echo, this dog, dude. Echo, come here. He's just staring at me. He's psycho. Anyways, you know, the liver is responsible for trying to detox that alcohol. And so, you know, if we know that alcohol is being detoxed by the liver, so are these other things. And so the liver has a two-phase way of detoxification. First off is through an enzymatic process where kind of toxins, you know, are caught and they're actually broken down to become a more toxic element at first. But this is a natural process. So I'm going to butcher this, but I know with alcohol, it's acetaldehyde that gets broken down to acetate. I think that's right. Acetate is far more toxic than acetaldehyde. But it needs to be broken down to acetate because then in phase 2, the next enzymatic process, there is an attachment to that acetate or whatever broken down version of a toxin so that it can then be shuffled into excretion. Now excretion through the urinary tract, through sweat, through tear ducts, whatever it is. But that's how that works. And this is a process that's going on all day. You know, lymph fluid as well is one of the processes, how toxins get released after they get processed and synthesized by the liver. Now, toxins, again, another buzzword, all that means are things that come into the body that our body recognizes as not good. We need to get rid of this. And that's all that means. And so, you know, there's a lot that needs to happen for this. And this is one of the issues with wellness influencers and stuff saying do a detox, and like lots of those detoxes involve like just drinking like cayenne pepper lemon water. The number one thing that is used in detoxification is enzymes, just like hormone conversion. I said in hormone conversion, what was the building block of hormones? Amino acids. What makes amino acid, or what breaks down to make amino acids? Protein. Well, if you're only ingesting like cucumber, lemon, hot pepper water, you're not detoxing. You're not putting your body through digestion, but you're not going to be able to detox well after a day or two because you don't have any amino acids going on. So this is that like way gross misunderstanding of what detoxification is, science, anatomy, biology. So what can happen though is that liver can be overburdened. We ask a lot of our liver, if you're drinking alcohol, having caffeine, taking supplements, taking pills, chronically stressed, like I said, live in a city where the air quality isn't that great, ingesting microplastics, using beauty care products that have like forever chemicals in them. These are all things that do burden your liver. Now, it's not to say a healthy liver can handle some of that and can detoxify it. It's this constant day in and day out overburdening of it that causes what we call like a congested liver. I know that might sound like, okay, come on. But we can actually test for this, something called a urinary bile acid test, a UBA test. Urinary bile acids, what we're testing for is our bile acids being secreted in the urinary tract. Bile acids are created in the liver. They're secreted to help with digestion. They're actually then resynthesized, repackaged through something called the hepatic portal system to be taken back into the liver and then reused. Well, when the liver is congested and it's producing these UBAs, it can't properly repackage and resynthesize the UBAs coming in through that hepatic portal system. It actually spills over into the urinary system and gets secreted. And when we pick that up on a test, that lets us know, okay, we got some congested liver here. That liver is not functioning optimally. That's why these bile acids aren't able to be resynthesized, repackaged, and stored in the gallbladder. So that's an issue. Again, huge determinant for metabolic chaos there if our liver is not doing its job. The liver is where a lot of hormones are synthesized. Cholesterol is the main precursor molecule to all of our hormones. That happens in the liver. So again, lots of issues if our liver is congested, not to mention like fatty liver disease, all that kind of stuff. So that's our second D, detox. E, energy system. This really just means food. I think in the health and wellness space, we've really lost the plot. On both sides, we now, like all things, humans, what a wild bunch we are. We're either in the camp of it's macros, it's calories in, calories out, or we're in the camp of all that matters is what you eat. And of course, for health and wellness, it's the middle ground. Now listen, you're morbidly obese. You got to lose weight. Okay, calories in, calories out is going to be the quickest way to get you there. I still would argue that you should be caring what you eat when you do it from a health perspective. But health and longevity is the middle ground of these two. And let me explain why. If all you do is focus on what you're eating, and I know a lot of people like this, if you work out even mildly and you're active, you could be eating great, like quality food, but you might be under eating. If you undereat long enough, you will be put or stay in a continual fight or flight state because your body will think it's, I hate to use the word starving, it will just be underfed. And when you're underfed, cortisol goes up because it's thinking we got to scrounge for food. And when you do this for too long, you get hormone dysfunction. You get, like we said, it adds into metabolic chaos. So you could be eating carnivore, whatever you think is super healthy. But if you're under eating for your activity level, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. This is why fasting can be an issue for a lot of people. They undereat and they end up, having enzyme issue, neurotransmitter issue, hormone issues, all kinds of stuff because they just end up under eating for so long. That also screws your metabolism. If you under eat habitually for a long time, your metabolism actually slows down. And this is why I've met so many clients in 12 years who have told me I'm only eating 1,000 calories and they're overweight. And I asked them how long you've been doing that. They go 20 years. No wonder. You don't have a metabolism. It's non-existent. I'm being hyperbolic. But this is what happens. Your metabolism slows down to nothing. You probably have an under-functioning thyroid, which aids in metabolism. And so there's that side of the spectrum. Now, again, the other side of the spectrum, if you're overeating, you're probably overeating unhealthy food. And so there's an argument to be made that, hey, if you want to lose weight, if you want to be healthy, if you just focus on what you eat, you're not going to overeat. And I understand that. And that is true to an extent. I just like to play the middle ground with this. On a grand scale, if you want to have healthy energy levels, you need to eat as much of healthy, minimally processed, or ideally non-processed foods to fuel your daily activity level. Eat as close to single ingredient foods as you can. A steak, white rice, a vegetable, a chicken breast, a sweet potato, a vegetable, a piece of fruit, right? The moment you start getting into, we took the ingredient and through a modern miracle made it into something else, all kinds of stuff has happened there. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not. It's not as good as it could be as if you kept it close to the earth. But you also got to make sure you're eating enough of it to fuel your daily activity. Micronutrients are incredibly important. This is why what you eat is important. I went over enzymes, neurotransmitters. Again, a lot of the precursors to the functions of the body through enzymes, through neurotransmitters, are minerals, are vitamins. Fiber intake is huge for the gut. I know there's a contingent of the keto sphere / the carnivore sphere that thinks you don't need fiber. I would love for those people to do GI maps. I would love to see what their gut bacteria looks like. It's probably not that great because one of the things your gut feeds off of is fiber, also humic and fulvic acid, which is supposed to be in our topsoil. It's really not anymore. And that's sad. Anyways. So fiber intake, all of these things. So quality is crucially important. Yes, you want to eat as good as you can, but you got to make sure you're eating enough to fuel your daily activity. And so that's your energy systems. If you want to feel energized, eat enough of the good stuff. Hell yeah, that rhymed. And then in nervous system, this is my favorite one if I'm being honest. I actually believe that all metabolic chaos and all the other systems are downstream of the nervous system. And the nervous system and the hormone system have interplay because really what controls the nervous system, and to be fair, it's a chicken or the egg thing. It's kind of like a feedback loop. Nervous system, stress hormone, nervous system. What we have is the ability to bounce back and forth between sympathetic, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and digest nervous system states. And again, we want homeostatic control. We want the ability to bounce back and forth between the two. And I always use the analogy, here comes my other dog, Odin, the original, the prodigal son, also the most angsty of huskies. And now my other dog will come because he's a jealous boy. Hi, Echo. So what did I talk about? Low production, right? But honest. And I lost my train of thought, but a nervous system, yes. So I always like to use the analogy. We've all probably seen a wild animal documentary or like a safari documentary, and we've all seen like an antelope getting chased by a lion or something like that. And if you've ever seen that and like the prey, let's say it's an antelope, gets away, what's really cool is what we usually see is like after about 2 or 3 minutes, they do like this violent shake that's actually built into them to kind of take them out of that sympathetic fight or flight state and cue their vagus nerve and pull them into a parasympathetic state. And then after 5 minutes of almost dying and being eaten, they're either grazing again or sometimes they're taking a nap. That's incredible. Think about you. Can you do that? No, I can't, right? Humans in the modern era, we are so chronically low-grade stressed and in this fight or flight state, we can't even pick up on it anymore. I've talked to so many people, me included, who go, I'm not stressed, because we only think about it psychologically, and the problem with only thinking about it psychologically is you live in your head 24/7. You can't pick up on the changes, really. You're the last person to know a change in yourself. And so we get so accustomed to the life we're living, we can't recognize that we are stressed out until the smallest thing sets us off. Like the small thing. So we know somebody's chronically stressed if they're the type of person who things that wouldn't normally stress them out or send them over the edge years ago is now sending them over the edge. Or if like the little things are getting to them, or if the whole OCD thing, or type A, or striver, or the achiever. These are chronically stressed humans. I am a recovering, chronically stressed, chronically fight or flight human being. And we talked about cortisol a little bit. The problem with this is if we're in that chronic fight or flight state, cortisol is being chronically produced. And when cortisol is being chronically produced, it is telling the body, stop doing what you're doing and only focus on raising the heart rate, dilating the pupils, raising your blood sugar. We got to fight a bear. And if you're like this for days, months, weeks, and years, and people are like this for years, it can lead to that exhaustive state we were talking about, where the body is no longer repairing itself. It's no longer, producing new hormones. My dogs are so cute. Doing anything like that. And that is what ultimately can lead to that metabolic chaos or dysfunction in these other areas. And what we'd want to see is the body, you can be stressed out, but that cortisol is released, that adrenaline gets released. But once the stressor is over, ideally we'd be able to be pulled right back into parasympathetic state. And our parasympathetic state would be our kind of default mode of being in. And DHEA, it codes for that. That's our anabolic. So DHEA usually gets released to balance out the release of cortisol. Again, homeostatic controls in the body. And then those anabolic processes can start again. But when you're chronically stressed, that's not happening, right? And what ends up happening is the sympathetic state of being becomes your normal default mode of nervous system. And that's that wired but tired feeling. That's that feeling like you're always moving forward, you're always achieving, you're always pursuing, you're always moving to the next task, you always have a to-do list. You find every little thing that's wrong in your environment. You have to try to fix it or clean it or do any of those things. If that's you are chronically stressed. And a lot of people, they go, I'm not chronically stressed. I'm not stressed because psychologically they've built this environment where they go, I don't get stressed. But stress isn't just like the fights with the spouse or the person cutting you off in traffic. It's also all the things we've already listed adding into metabolic chaos. So if you have gut dysfunction, that's a stressor. If you have if you're eating the wrong foods, you're overweight, or you have imbalances in your macronutrient or micronutrient profiles, that's a stressor. That's putting you into fight or flight. If your liver is congested, that's putting you into fight or flight. So like all these things internally are also putting us into a fight or flight state. Your surroundings. If you're constantly watching the news, you're being put in the chronically fight or flight state. If you're chronically online, chronically in the fight or flight state. If you have to commute to work every single day and you're sitting in traffic, you're chronically in fight or flight. So there's so much here. You can psychologically ninja yourself out of thinking you're chronically stressed. Your body does not care what you psychologically are thinking, right? Now, is there good stress? There's eustress, absolutely. Like working out is a stressor. That's a good stress, but when you're somebody who's already chronically stressed, it actually can do, I'm not gonna say more damage. It can be good, but you just have to be aware that you're actually chronically stressed and then have really good coping mechanisms for that. And so, in my opinion, most of the issues in metabolic chaos and downstream in the other systems come from being in a default mode of fight or flight. Like that's your daily living state, and it's like impossible to pull yourself into parasympathetic. We'd want to default to parasympathetic and be able to get into these heightened states really quickly when needed and pull ourselves out of it, which I've developed a training method for called the Stellar Switch Method. In the Stellar Switch Method, we have sympathetic days meant to engage fight or flight, mainly fight. We have parasympathetic days, which are meant to slow down through movement, focus on our breath, focus on flowing, connect inwards to our body and feel it. And then the really cool day, we have the switching day. We'll have a movement that stimulates fight immediately into a movement that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And we will train ourselves to go back and forth. If you're interested in that, we are currently running a beta through August, $5.99. If you would like a link to that, comment and I will send you a link. Okay, oxidative stress is next. So that finishes out the HIDDN. There is an added O, oxidative stress. What is oxidative stress? We have free radicals in our body. Free radicals are these really unstable molecules. They're unstable because they're missing an electron. This is biochemistry stuff. And they're scrounging. They're electron scroungers. Where are they finding those electrons? Our cells, our DNA. They snatch an electron from a cell. That cell becomes incredibly unstable now. It creates tissue damage. It creates DNA damage. It creates damage to our mitochondria because mitochondria are in the cell. This is what causes faster aging, wrinkles, like signs of aging. This is also, in the long run, what can be a determinant for certain cancers. Now, how do free radicals get neutralized? Antioxidants. Antioxidants come from things like polyphenols in foods, all kinds of stuff for antioxidants. Antioxidants are meant to neutralize. They lend a electron, the antioxidant, and kind of neutralize that free radical. So when oxidative stress is very high, it means, again, we've lost homeostatic control. We have more free radicals than we do antioxidants. More free radicals means more cellular damage, more tissue damage, more damage to our DNA, and that obviously leads to metabolic chaos. And at this point, if we're getting oxidative stress, we know that this metabolic chaos is pretty deep at this point, if it's getting to that cellular level, if it's getting to that molecule level. And so we test for that, something called 8-OHDG, which is a molecule that gets released when there's damage to cellular DNA, essentially. And if that number is high, we know that there is a lot of oxidative stress. If that number is low, like very low, again, exhaustive state, that means we've actually had extended periods of oxidative stress. So these are the 7 areas that we look at FDN, and if there is deficiencies or disruptions in these areas, they are feeding into metabolic chaos and then also feeding back out into the other systems. If these dysfunctions go unchecked for too long, this is what leads to chronic illness. This is what leads to a genetic marker getting flipped on, and now you're having an autoimmune issue. This is what leads to a cancer diagnosis. This is what leads to almost all of these things. And again, it's not just one system. It's not just one blood marker. It's not just one thing. It's the interplay between them. If there is a breakdown in one area, you can guarantee it's going to cause a breakdown in another. And so when it comes to healing, we have to think about healing the whole body, the whole person, the whole system. And we have to figure out where those healing opportunities are through looking at it from a metabolic chaos lens as opposed to a diagnostic lens and just, you have leaky gut or you have this. It's like, yeah, you got all of this. Like, we got to work on all of these things. And as we start fixing things over here, it's going to have an effect over here. And then we're going to attack over here and we're going to attack over here. And we're going to fix the body holistically. The body is a symphony. If one instrument is out of tune or off beat, it's going to affect the whole symphony. And now everything's going to start breaking down from there. So that is the video. Hidden, HIDDNO, trademarked by FDN, Reed Davis. But I think it's great. I think it's a great frame for health, for wellness, why disease, why chronic illness happens. So if you guys are interested in stuff like this, we actually have a metabolic chaos scorecard that FDN has created, and it's what I use as kind of an intake form. If that's something you'd be interested just for your own knowledge to see kind of like, it's based off of symptoms, what symptoms you're having. It'll show you kind of your symptoms per system and then your overall score. Let me know, again, in the comment section, or just, find me on Instagram, Stellar Strength Awakening, like, subscribe this stuff, DM me there. I can send you a metabolic chaos score sheet. So anyways, hope it was an enlightening video, a little bit more laid back. My dog's interrupted multiple times, but I hope the information was something of value. Over the coming months, I'm going to deep dive into each of those systems more in depth and talk about some biochemical stuff, some anatomy, physiology stuff, some testing stuff, some why breakdowns happen, some ways you can fix or work on those things from a protocol perspective. So if you're interested in working with me, again, reach out. Taking a wait list right now. So anyways, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.